The morning sun on May 8, 1902, barely has a chance to warm the cobblestone streets of Saint-Pierre, Martinique. It is 7:52 a.m. Suddenly, without warning, the world dissolves into a blinding, incandescent torrent. A wall of superheated gas and volcanic debris, moving at over 100 miles per hour, sweeps down the slopes of Mount Pelée. It's not lava, not ash falling gently from the sky. This is something far more terrible, an unholy breath from the very core of the earth itself. The air, now a searing furnace, instantly ignites everything combustible: wood, fabric, human flesh. Windows shatter inwards, glass vaporizes, and solid stone crumbles like chalk. People caught in the open are carbonized, their bodies instantly mummified in positions of desperate agony. Others, momentarily sheltered, feel their lungs boil, their eyes explode, their skin blister and peel away in the terrifying milliseconds before they cease to be. The city's bustling port, once filled with ships and the cries of merchants, becomes a graveyard of burning hulls and scalded water. A wave of unimaginable heat washes over the entire urban area, consuming everything, leaving behind only shadows and ash. The vibrant life of Saint-Pierre is extinguished, not in hours or minutes, but in 2 devastating breaths of hellfire. 30,000 souls, all gone, in less time than it takes to read this sentence. How could an entire city simply cease to exist in the blink of an eye, with virtually no survivors? But to understand how we got here, how an entire metropolis could be erased from the map, we need to go back. Before the Inferno, Saint-Pierre was a jewel, a vibrant cultural and economic hub nestled on the northwest coast of Martinique, a French colony in the Lesser Antilles. Fondly known as the Paris of the Caribbean, it boasted a population of over 28,000 within its city limits, swelling to nearly 40,000 with the surrounding communes. Its architecture was distinctly European, featuring grand stone buildings, elegant wrought iron balconies, and bustling squares. The city was a beacon of prosperity, fueled by the lucrative sugar and rum industries, with ships from across the globe docking in its deep-water harbor. Life here was a tapestry of French colonial grandeur and vibrant Creole culture. Children played in the sun-drenched streets, merchants hawked their wares in lively markets, and the cafes buzzed with conversation. Families enjoyed leisurely evenings, cooled by the gentle sea breeze, completely unaware of the geological monster slumbering just 6 kilometers to the north. The rhythms of life were predictable, punctuated by church bells and the daily routines of commerce and leisure. It was a place where generations had lived and died in peace, never imagining that the majestic, cloud-shrouded peak dominating their skyline held such destructive power. The people of Saint-Pierre lived in a paradise, a dream that was about to become a nightmare. The year is 1902, a period of burgeoning industrialization and colonial expansion across the globe. Martinique, a prized possession of the French Empire since 1635, was enjoying a period of relative peace and economic stability. Saint-Pierre served as the capital and commercial heart of the island, a crucial link in the chain of global trade. The social fabric of the city was complex, reflecting the colonial hierarchy. European administrators, wealthy planters, and merchants formed the elite, while the majority of the population consisted of Afro-Caribbean descendants, many working in the sugar cane fields or the city's various industries. Despite its colonial status, Saint-Pierre was a place of considerable cultural sophistication. It housed an opera house, botanical gardens, and a respected secondary school, establishing itself as the intellectual and artistic center of the Lesser Antilles. Governor Louis Moutet, the highest French official on the island, resided in Fort-de-France, the administrative capital, but Saint-Pierre remained the undeniable jewel. The approaching legislative elections, scheduled for May 10, 1902, were a major preoccupation for the political class, overshadowing many other concerns. It was a world confident in its progress, where the wonders of science and technology were celebrated, yet utterly unprepared for the raw, untamed power of the natural world. This was a place where human ambitions and natural forces were on a collision course, though no one, not yet, truly grasped the impending doom. The first whispers from the peak began subtly, easy to dismiss amidst the daily hum of life. By late April 1902, residents in the communes surrounding Mount Pelée reported an increase in fumarolic activity, small plumes of steam and sulfurous gas rising from the volcano's summit. These were not entirely uncommon. Pelée had shown minor activity before, usually without incident. Farmers living on the upper slopes noticed their livestock becoming restless, animals refusing to graze in certain areas, their instincts perceiving a shift in the Earth's energy that humans rationalized away. On April 23rd, the first significant ashfall occurred, a fine, gritty powder coating the roofs and streets of Saint-Pierre. It was unsettling, but local officials, and even the scientific committee formed to monitor the volcano, quickly downplayed its significance. Nothing to worry about, they assured the populace. Just Mount Pelée clearing its throat. The focus remained on the upcoming elections, with politicians fearing that any talk of evacuation would cause panic, disrupt voting, and severely damage the economy. There was a collective agreement, unspoken but powerful, to maintain a facade of normalcy. Yet the subtle signs were accumulating, a growing stench of sulfur in the air, the appearance of small, unusual tremors, and a persistent, low rumble that some residents swore they could hear, a deep thrumming from beneath the earth. The mountain was stirring and the clock was ticking, even as the city went about its business, oblivious to the monstrous force slowly gathering power beneath their feet. The gentle warnings soon gave way to far more ominous developments. On April 27th, the first significant alarm sounded. A series of heavy mudslides known as lahars began to cascade down the Rivière Blanche, a river that flowed directly from Pelé's crater down to the sea, just north of Saint-Pierre. These flows, a mix of volcanic ash, rock, and water, were denser and far more destructive than typical floods. They swept away bridges and ravaged the Guyrin sugar refinery and distillery, located at the river's mouth. At least 23 workers at the distillery were killed, buried alive in the viscous torrent. This event should have been a stark, undeniable warning. People in Saint-Pierre witnessed the muddy, debris-laden water filling the bay, turning the clear Caribbean turquoise into a murky, brown sludge. The sheer force of the lahars sent a chilling message, but it was once again dismissed by the authorities as an isolated incident, an unfortunate consequence of heavy rains interacting with the accumulated ash. Governor Moutet and his council continued to downplay the danger, reiterating their assurances of safety, fearing the economic fallout and the political implications of a mass exodus just days before the election. Many residents, particularly the poorer working class, had no means to leave even if they wanted to, reliant on the city's industry for their survival. The rich might flee, but the poor were left trapped, told to stay. And then came the truly stomach-dropping detail. On May 5th, a massive, foul-smelling black cloud, a genuine eruption column, spewed from Pelé's summit, unleashing a hail of pumice and ash that blanketed the city in darkness, extinguishing streetlights and forcing people indoors. The mountain was no longer merely clearing its throat, it was roaring. The mountain's warnings intensified with terrifying regularity. The air grew heavy with the stench of sulfur, and a constant, low rumble became an inescapable soundtrack to daily life in Saint-Pierre. Thousands of birds, fleeing the noxious fumes and seismic activity on the slopes, descended upon the city, creating an eerie, unsettling cacophony as they desperately sought refuge. Snakes and other small animals, driven from their natural habitats by the rising heat and gas, swarmed into the lower-lying areas, causing widespread alarm. On May 6th, the situation escalated further when a smaller preliminary eruption occurred, sending a dark, dense cloud across the sky and depositing a heavier layer of ash. This was accompanied by intense lightning and thunder, a terrifying meteorological display that felt apocalyptic. Still, the official narrative held firm. There was no immediate danger to Saint-Pierre. Governor Moutet even traveled to Saint-Pierre on May 7th, the day before the catastrophic eruption, perhaps to personally reassure the populace and solidify support for his political allies. He intended to stay the night, further cementing the illusion of safety. It was amidst this escalating chaos that a new, poignant character emerges into the narrative, Louis-Auguste Saint-Pierre. A young, local dockworker, Saint-Pierre had been imprisoned in a thick-walled dungeon beneath the city's main square for assault. His cell, built for solitary confinement and punishment, would, ironically, become his salvation. He watched from his tiny grate as the city teetered on the brink, oblivious to the fact that his punishment would soon become his unlikely shield. The sheer concentration of the official narrative, insisting on safety while all natural signs screamed otherwise, created a dissonance that defied logic. Something clearly did not add up. Everything pointed one way. The mountain was volatile, increasingly dangerous, and posed an existential threat to Saint-Pierre. Scientific reports, anecdotal evidence from farmers and sailors, the undeniable behavior of the natural world, all screamed for immediate evacuation. Logic, common sense, and the instinct for self-preservation should have dictated a swift and decisive response to empty the city. But then the but moment arrived, a chilling pivot driven not by geology, but by human ambition and political calculation. Governor Louis Moutet, a man deeply invested in the political outcome of the upcoming legislative elections scheduled for Sunday, May 10th, made a catastrophic decision. His political faction needed a strong showing in Saint-Pierre, a key electoral district, to secure victory. A mass evacuation, he reasoned, would not only disenfranchise thousands of voters, but also cause immense economic disruption, alienating the powerful planters and merchants who supported his party. Public health officials, influenced by the administration, publicly declared that Saint-Pierre was safe, despite growing evidence to the contrary. They even dismissed the death of the refinery workers as an isolated accident. The unspoken command from the top was clear: maintain order, suppress panic, and ensure the elections proceed as planned. This wasn't merely neglect, it was an active policy of suppression, a deliberate choice to prioritize political gain and economic stability over human lives. The city was, in essence, held hostage by the electoral calendar, its population forced to remain in the path of a ticking time bomb. The weight of this decision would soon crush an entire generation. What the pivot reveals is a deeper layer of political maneuvering and economic self-interest that few historical accounts fully explore. It wasn't just a simple fear of panic. It was a meticulously orchestrated effort to control the narrative and, by extension, the population. The incumbent political party, supported by Governor Moutet, faced a strong challenge from an opposition known for its socialist leanings. The voting population of Saint-Pierre was critical to the outcome. Evacuating the city would have meant relocating tens of thousands of potential voters, disrupting the delicate political balance, and potentially swinging the election in favor of the opposition. Beyond the ballots, the economic engine of Martinique, heavily reliant on the rum and sugar plantations surrounding Saint-Pierre, would grind to a halt. Powerful landowners and distillery owners, who wielded significant influence, pressured the administration to maintain calm and ensure their workforce remained in place. This collusion between political ambition and economic interest created a deadly trap. The official scientific commission, comprised of local figures, issued reports that consistently downplayed the threat, effectively becoming instruments of the government's agenda. One particularly chilling detail, often overlooked, is the specific directive issued to telegraph operators. Any reports of unusual volcanic activity were to be suppressed or censored before being sent off-island. The outside world remained largely unaware of the true extent of the danger, meticulously hidden behind a curtain of official reassurances. This deliberate deception ensured that the people of Saint-Pierre, denied accurate information and prevented from leaving, would face the volcano's wrath alone, a calculated sacrifice for political expediency. Amidst the unfolding catastrophe, the human cost is best understood not through statistics, but through individual stories, particularly that of Louis-Auguste Saint-Pierre. Aged 27, a dockworker known for occasional brawls, Saint-Pierre was arrested for assault on May 7, 1902, and confined to a solitary cell in the city jail. His prison, a robust, stone-built dungeon with walls several feet thick, was designed for maximum security, not for protection against a volcano. His small, barred window offered only a limited view of the street, yet it was enough to witness the mounting dread in the city, the panicked birds, the ash-laden sky, the increasingly frenetic atmosphere. He could hear the distant rumbling, feeling it reverberate through the very stones of his cell. When the pyroclastic flow struck Saint-Pierre, the city was instantly engulfed. Saint-Pierre, huddled in the oppressive darkness of his cell, was subjected to an unimaginable ordeal. The superheated gas permeated his cell, burning him severely. He suffered degree burns across his entire body, his skin scorched and blistered, yet the massive stone walls of his dungeon, incredibly, shielded him from the direct, pulverizing force of the blast that annihilated everything else. He lay in agony delirious for 4 agonizing days, surrounded by the silence of death, before a rescue party, bewildered by the total destruction, stumbled upon his cell. They found him barely alive, his body horrifically burned, but conscious. He was the sole known survivor within the blast zone of Saint-Pierre, a prisoner saved by his incarceration. His story underscores the horrific randomness of survival and loss, where a punishment became a miraculous reprieve, and an entire city was extinguished, leaving behind one man to bear witness to its absolute obliteration. In the immediate, chaotic aftermath of Saint-Pierre's annihilation, a desperate scramble began to control the narrative. The sheer scale of the disaster, with over 30,000 dead, was an undeniable tragedy, but the underlying culpability of the colonial administration was a secret that needed to be buried. Who benefited from the silence? The French government, eager to maintain its image of enlightened colonial rule, and the powerful local elite, whose political and economic interests had been prioritized over human lives. Initial official reports focused exclusively on the unpredictable and unprecedented nature of the volcanic eruption, portraying it as a purely natural disaster, an act of God beyond human control. There was a conspicuous absence of any mention of the ignored warnings, the suppressed scientific reports, or the active discouragement of evacuation. Testimonies from those who had left Saint-Pierre before the final eruption, detailing the growing fears and the official reassurances, were largely disregarded or marginalized. Any suggestion of negligence or political interference was swiftly denounced as sensationalism or anti-government propaganda. The goal was simple: absolve the colonial administration and its governor from any responsibility for the mass deaths. The bodies of the dead, incinerated or vaporized beyond recognition, could not speak. The city itself was a silent tomb, its destruction serving as a convenient erasure of evidence. The speed and totality of the destruction were leveraged to support the narrative of an unavoidable catastrophe. The real mystery wasn't just how the city was destroyed, but why the conditions for its destruction were so meticulously, if inadvertently, cultivated by those in power. And then the records simply stopped or were selectively curated, leaving gaping holes in the official history of the events leading up to May 8th. Amidst the political maneuvering and the tragic aftermath, true scientific inquiry began. French volcanologist Alfred Lacroix, an eminent figure in the field, arrived in Martinique just days after the eruption on May 20th. His mission was to understand precisely what had transpired. What Lacroix found defied previous understanding of volcanic eruptions. The devastation was not from slow-moving lava flows or suffocating ash falls, as was commonly assumed. Instead, the landscape bore the hallmarks of something far more violent, an ultra-fast, incandescent blast. He observed the eerie preservation of shadows burned onto walls, the instantaneous carbonization of organic matter, and the way heavy objects had been ripped from their foundations and flung across great distances. Trees were stripped bare, their trunks left standing like ghostly sentinels, but debarked on one side, pointing away from the crater, clear evidence of a powerful directional blast. Lacroix meticulously documented the geological evidence, analyzing the deposits and the patterns of destruction. His findings were groundbreaking. He concluded that the city had been destroyed by what he termed a nae ardent, or glowing cloud, a phenomenon now universally known as a pyroclastic flow. This was a superheated mixture of volcanic gas, ash, and rock fragments, moving at incredible speeds, and capable of incinerating and pulverizing everything in its path. His work revolutionized volcanology, providing the first definitive scientific explanation for such a devastating event. Lacroix's rigorous investigation, conducted in the face of immense destruction and potential political pressure, began to peel back the layers of official narrative, revealing the true, terrifying nature of Mount Pelée's wrath and laying bare the extent of the cataclysm. In the immediate aftermath, the official explanation, designed to absolve the authorities, suggested a disaster primarily caused by a suffocating cloud of ash and noxious gases. While ashfall and gas were undoubtedly present and dangerous, this explanation deliberately omitted the true, devastating mechanism of the destruction. It framed the event as a slow, creeping suffocation, implying a tragic but somewhat less immediate or violent demise for the victims. This narrative was convenient because it aligned with more familiar volcanic hazards, making the scale of human intervention, or lack thereof, seem less egregious. It also implied that the victims might have had more time, or that their deaths were a consequence of unavoidable natural forces, rather than the instantaneous incineration by a superheated blast. The concept of a pyroclastic flow, annihilated ardent, was virtually unknown to the general public and even many scientists at the time. By focusing on suffocation and poisonous fumes, the authorities could subtly divert attention from the more horrifying, sudden, and complete obliteration that the city had experienced. This diluted the true nature of the horror and, crucially, reduced the perceived responsibility of those who had failed to evacuate the city. If people died from suffocation, it could be argued that escape was simply impossible once the cloud arrived. However, the physical evidence, the instantly carbonized bodies, the vaporized glass, the stripped trees, directly contradicted this gentler, yet false, explanation. These were not the signs of suffocation. They were the indelible marks of an inferno, a superheated avalanche of death that left no room for survival or escape, making the official story crumble under scientific scrutiny. The most credible theory, now universally accepted thanks to Alfred Lacroix's pioneering work, paints a far more terrifying picture. Saint-Pierre was not simply buried or suffocated, it was instantaneously destroyed by a annihilated ardent, a pyroclastic flow. This is a fast-moving current of superheated gas and volcanic debris, including ash, pumice, and rock fragments, that flows down the side of a volcano at speeds often exceeding 100 kilometers per hour, sometimes even reaching several hundred. The temperature within these flows can range from 200 degrees C to 700 degrees C, 390 degrees F to 1,300 degrees F. When the main eruption column of Mount Pelée collapsed on May 8, 1902, it generated a massive, dense pyroclastic flow that raced directly towards Saint-Pierre. The evidence is unambiguous. The blast incinerated everything combustible, vaporized water instantly, and caused immediate carbonization of organic material. The directional stripping of trees and structures, the way certain sides of buildings were scoured clean while others remained relatively intact, confirmed the lateral, powerful surge. The heat was so intense that glass bottles melted and reformed, and objects were often found welded together. Even the air itself, superheated and devoid of oxygen, would have caused instant death by thermal shock and asphyxiation, making survival impossible. The sheer momentum of the flow meant that structures were not just burned, but pulverized and swept away. This wasn't merely a natural disaster, it was a demonstration of a force so profound, so utterly destructive, that it reshaped not only the landscape but also our understanding of volcanic hazards. The city's complete obliteration in mere minutes was a testament to the unparalleled fury of the glowing cloud, leaving no doubt about the true mechanism of its demise. The most disturbing fact in the entire story of Mount Pelée and Saint-Pierre is not the political negligence, nor the overwhelming power of the volcano itself, but the chilling evidence of the immediate aftermath. When rescue teams finally ventured into the ruins, what they found was profoundly unsettling. There were almost no human remains. The sheer intensity of the pyroclastic flow meant that most of the 30,000 victims were not just killed, they were almost entirely vaporized, reduced to dust or carbonized fragments indistinguishable from the rubble. The few bodies that were discovered were often found in grotesque, instantaneously petrified postures, frozen in their final moments of terror or attempting to shield themselves, their flesh baked and mummified by the intense heat. Yet perhaps even more disturbing was the state of the city's objects. In some areas, porcelain dolls were found intact, yet the children playing with them were gone. Delicate lace curtains were sometimes found perfectly draped, while the homes they adorned were reduced to shells and their inhabitants annihilated. In one instance, a church bell was found partially melted, indicating extreme heat, but the wooden cross in its belfry was merely charred, revealing the capricious and uneven nature of the superheated blast. The air itself had become a weapon, incinerating life while sometimes inexplicably sparing fragile objects. The absolute instantaneous obliteration of an entire population, leaving behind little more than ghostly imprints and scattered artifacts, speaks to a level of destruction that defies comprehension. It was as if the city and everyone in it had simply ceased to be, swallowed by an inferno so complete it left almost no trace, a testament to the ultimate power of nature and the horrifying fragility of human existence. The eruption of Mount Pelée and the tragic destruction of Saint-Pierre stands as a chilling monument to the unpredictable power of nature and the profound consequences of human hubris. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about authority, responsibility, and the value placed on human life in the face of political and economic agendas. This was not merely a natural disaster, it was a preventable tragedy, a cautionary tale echoing through history about what happens when warnings are ignored, when science is suppressed, and when the desire for control overshadows the imperative to protect. The lessons from Saint-Pierre are stark. The Earth can unleash forces beyond our full comprehension, and when it does, our only defense often lies in our ability to listen, to adapt, and to prioritize safety above all else. Louis-Auguste Saint-Pierre, the prisoner who survived, became an unwitting symbol of this horror, traveling with a circus freak show, displaying his burns, a living testament to the day the world ended for Saint-Pierre. His life and the silent ruins of a once thriving city continue to ask us, have we truly learned these lessons, or are we destined to repeat the same mistakes, caught between the rumbling earth and the dangerous decisions of those in power? The story of Mount Pelée reminds us that history is not just about what happened, but about what could have been prevented. If this kept you up at night, subscribe. We post dark history every week.